Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnus. Joining me this week is my friend Trell.
Hello.
And my other friend, Tettles.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back.
Welcome back to both of you as well. I missed you guys. It's been a long week since our last Titanforge podcast. But here we are again. And the week is a lot worse than it was last time we talked as well.
Well, I mean, it's worse for some. I mean, if you're a raider pretty much exclusively, Blood of the Enemy got nerfed, so
that's true.
things are
Yeah,
looking up.
this is the week to farm Blood of the Enemy. It is Battleground Honor week, and they nerfed the requirements for that, which is really nice. So that's good if that's you. But if you're somebody who likes to do keys, it's a little bit of a rough week for keys. Trell, why is this week so bad for keys?
Oh, there's this thing that stops you from doing your route. It's called the Void Emissary, and it happens to be in like 7 different locations in some dungeons this week instead of like 2 or 3. And actually, you can play around most of the Void Emissaries and clean them down with a pack or LOS them, but some make it so difficult that some dungeons you can't really do at the highest level this week. You probably have to do 2 or 3 levels lower than, say, a good week. So a Talazar, maybe not a 24, but you could probably do a 22 if you're really, really strong.
I mean, on the alternative, I feel like Void Emissary Heavy Week is probably a little bit better for pugs in general. I feel like Tides and Enchanted Heavy stuff requires a little bit more coordination, though. So if you're doing probably like 10 to 12s in a pug, you may be a little bit better off, though.
I think that like Grievous Void is a tough combo. Like those are both percent health based, so in a 10 or 11 or whatever, that's still going to be a really harsh check on your healer.
But Void skills are fortified, and like, I mean, I don't know, if you're doing a 10, then it's not going to really have that much health, right?
Yeah, I guess just dealing with a Void is pretty easy. If your DPS is way higher than the level of the key or whatever.
Yeah,
average Void, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it only gets 1 cast off, it's really not too bad. So in lower keys, if you can burn it before the second cast, it's pretty easy in most situations, except for maybe the Void right by full call.
Yeah, the Void by full call. That one is tough for anybody. Like you have to skip that one, right? There's no realistic way to kill that pack unless the key is like 7 or more levels below what you can do.
We did it on a 15 and on alts just to do it the way Blizzard intended, and I think we chain wiped to it 3 or 4 times, and Jam had to do 95k HPS on a 15 just for 1 pack. It was pretty insane.
My experience with that as well has been doing it at a lower key, thinking we can do this, and then chain wiping to it. So what an absurd pack. Okay.
Well, there's a reason I picked Eye of the Storm as our background for this week, because it is Battleground weekend and keys are in fact closed.
Ooh, this is a nice one as well, Tettles, and I'm sure as a lore expert you've selected this because Eye of the Storm is in the Twisting Nether and that's Void related. And you know you're renowned for being a lore expert.
Yeah. I knew you were gonna wrap that around and chain that in somehow. Exactly. Thank you, Dratnus.
You're welcome. Yeah, I noticed these little things you do, Tettles. Okay, so this week we're gonna talk a little bit about Void, although we're not gonna spend too long on it. We're gonna talk about people going Alliance to counterplay against Void Week, and also just kind of Voids on regular week, and also just because Shadowmeld's OP. We'll talk about the Blood of the Enemy thing a bit too. And then we're going to spend most of the week most of this episode talking about affixes in general. So not just Beguiling, not just Void Week, but we're gonna go through kind of all the affixes and talk about what we think about them and which ones we think could use which changes and how they play on live and stuff like that. So that's the main topic. But first, let's talk a little bit about social media, where you can find our show. Twitter is one of those social medias where you can find our show.
Hell yeah, that was a good segue. I like that.
Already laughing.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was that funny, but I'll take it.
It's a good segue. I appreciate it.
Twitter is at Titanforge WoW. That's where we are on Twitter. There you can submit questions to our show. Usually we put up a tweet about a day and a half before each show. So regardless of when you listen, you probably have time to see what our topic is going to be and send us questions. You can also send us questions on our Discord. And if you're a patron at patreon.com/Titanforge, you can get access to some special Discord channels. You can even make one of your own if you choose one of the tiers. And if you're a patron, we may end up thanking you specifically every week if you select that tier as well. The people who've done that are Paul, Gyu, Never Nude, and Ahar of US Proudmore. Thanks for your support. Let's move on to our main topic. So let's start by talking about the Voids. One thing that people may not be aware of, actually, is that some Void Emissaries have changed this week. It's not the first week that they've done this. A couple weeks ago, remember Teaming Week, where they took the Void out of Citralis, the one in the 5 dervishes. This week, we have lost some Voids in the Underrot. So let me pull up a little picture here. At the beginning of the Underrot, there used to be a Void right at the start of the dungeon next to a Maggot that you just would engage immediately if you decided to go that direction. And that Void has been completely removed. There also used to be 2 Voids, one on each bridge path, going down at the start of the Underrot. One of those has been removed. Now the joy of this is that one of those Voids has been removed at random. So there's 2 elements of RNG now in Underrot. It used to be that it just kind of was left or right that was the good side to go down, that didn't have double matron next to the mask, and that was not really RNG, right? Because it was just left or right. That's just a cosmetic difference. But now it's actually random. You can get 2 different configurations that dramatically change how the dungeon works. So you may have to deal with a Void blocking the good side, or you may not have a Void blocking the good side. And if the Void isn't blocking the good side, you just pull an extra worm later instead, and that's a lot easier. So I'd say that ends up costing you maybe an extra pull over the dungeon, because it's kind of hard to pull stuff onto this Void. So that's kind of like a 1-minute difference. I don't know how long you guys have found that to be, but it's fun to have some RNG added into this dungeon rather than taken away.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about how the double matron mask pack is just like completely not doable by itself, or do we just want to skip over that and just pretend like that's not a thing too?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those like dungeons have these sort of joke pulls that you can just see them there, and you kind of look at the MDT and you're like, oh, okay, I understand. I'm not supposed to pull that, and that's what the double matron mask is for sure.
Yeah, just double enrage the mask and instantly die to harrowing despair as you can't kick the cast quick enough.
Yeah, you have to pre-kick. You just have to yeah. You just guess it's coming and just hit your kick button and hope. Or evade. I think evade can do that kick. That's probably the person I know who is most likely to actually land that kick. Yeah.
Maybe.
The thing is, like, also the voids here are in such hard spots. Like the top of the bridge is a spot where the matron patrol actually runs into that void.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have a distract or a ring of peace or something to delay the patrol on getting there, it's gonna pull with the void, and it's really hard to survive both things at once. There's not even a spot to LOS the void at the top of the stairs. So not only is it a 1-minute delay on your dungeon, it's also really dangerous, and you're probably gonna lose some people in the pull if the matron gets in.
You likely need to just wait. Like there are times where you'll need to just wait for the patrol to move a little bit if you don't have that distract. Most groups do have 1 distract at least, though. Really low DPS in chat points out that you can do it with a warlock. I assume they mean you can like warlock gate past this void onto the bridge. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that.
I bet you could do that.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I do like seeing extra gateway spots added to dungeons. Oh, the mask guy? Okay. Unlucky. Maybe you could actually skip these with warlocks, though. I think it's possible. Now that I think about it, right? Like that sounds like a freehold gateway that we do on bridges.
Maybe if you could like clear out the ticks and then try from that right side.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I have no idea how the wall and the terrain ends up working out with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Like this week actually feels terrible, like the very beginning of Underrot, but it is because it is fortified and void heavy, not necessarily because it's not necessarily just because of one or the other. Just because you're just going to get one shot by the matron or the headhunter, like random RNG damage, and then you just like get one tapped by 1 stack of the void.
Yeah, was that you in the key? I did a key with you, I think, Tuttles, where you died to that and then you released and then got charged and died again.
I got instant killed like 2 times. Okay, so the headhunter had 1 stack of bolstering from the priest, and he double threw the weapon at me, and it instantly killed me, even through all my armor and everything else. And then the matron with 1 stack of bolstering and his enraged I released, and the matron charged me cross room and instantly killed me. And it was like, this game kind of sucks sometimes, I guess. You just kind of just take it as you get it.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that. That was only a 20 key as well, so one would expect this to be one-shotty without bolstering stacks even on a 22 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. This week is not exactly optimal, but I feel like there's ways of playing around it. I feel like overall, Grievous and bolstering, it's pretty rough for uncoordinated groups, but bolstering in of itself shouldn't be bad. Like, we'll talk about this later, but I don't think on-death affixes are really that bad for people who are actually in voice and super coordinated. Grievous can be kind of annoying, but then Void on top of it makes it feel pretty much unmanageable. Void Emissary is what I feel like makes it worse at the higher end, whereas at the lower end, Void Emissary seems like it would be a little bit easier than even the other two affix setups.
I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. Now, I do want to just kind of circle back real quick to the changes in the Underrot here. I'm a fan of these changes. I just wish it wasn't RNG introduced to the dungeon.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But taking that void away from the maggot, I think, is just good at the start. That's nice. Removing voids from dungeons is good.
I almost disagree. Like, I feel like the void with the maggot should be what they're aiming for with the void emissaries themselves. Like, they should want to force you to pull those ticks on the left side. Like,
Okay.
it should be like, all right, well, you either play the maggot with the void or you play the ticks on the left side. Instead, now it's I play this void in a choke on RNG. Like, I feel like the void with the maggot is like
that's
what
true.
It should be.
You know what? I
I
changed my
agree
mind.
with that.
Yeah, because okay, so there's like kind of two philosophies for voids, right? You can put a void when there's two different packs to pull, and one cool thing to do with a void there is to put it in the more popular to pull pack and force people to make a decision to like pull something they wouldn't normally because there's not a void there. Or you can just put a void in the choke, and that's what Tettles is kind of mad about. Where you kind of, instead of increasing decisions and making people pull something they wouldn't normally, now you're just making people pull a void because it's in the choke. And what are you going to do? Reroll Alliance?
Yeah, I mean, and if we want to talk about voids in the choke, like, let's talk about the Temple of Seth Rao's bottom of stairs bullshit with where you have the double Krolusk charge guys, you have the marksman shard shot, and then you have the void emissary, and you just like get literally RNG'd to death like by the first cast of the void. You're just like, JB. I don't think I've heard JB. JB and I got so mad about this too. We literally power fed to the shit on a 20, and I don't think I've been that mad in a while.
Dude, we started with 2 Temple 23 keys in our bags, and 5 minutes later we had 2 Temple 20s in our bags, and we left. We ran away from Temple. We were just like, this is stupid. You know, we just chain fed to this key and like kept lowering it, trying again that same pull, and it just never worked. And we just hearthed eventually and went somewhere else.
Like, do you just death run that? Like,
yeah,
oh, man.
I'm pretty sure you're supposed to just death run that or go right instead of left. But either way, you're just gonna have to deal with 2 marksmen, 2 pups, and that's really rough combined with a void on Grievous on Fortified.
Is it any better? Like, I'm just gonna get shot and then instantly killed by the.
I think it's a little better on right side. I think right is a lot lower tank damage than left because you don't have those shrouded fangs, you know, stunning you and everything.
I think the play there is actually you death run all the way to the boss,
Mm-hmm.
do the boss first before any trash, and then you pull
Add in that pull when you have one boss left.
Yeah, with the last boss, the pull on the left before the bridge, and that's it. Like, honestly,
I like those strategies, but it's kind of hard to line that up unless you're playing with a fire mage or a prot warrior. It's kind of hard for one of the bosses to die significantly before the other does.
You still get a little time even as on a brewmaster.
I still don't think it should be like that. Like, regardless of whether or not it's playable, like that strategy in of itself is absolutely insane for like the common player too, which is what you have to think of whenever you're implementing these kind of things. Like Temple of Seth Rao's without a rogue is already 135% count or some shit, right?
Yeah, I was about to say I did a Temple 13 on my like 3 in the morning the other day when I was supposed to be asleep, but I wasn't. That's besides the point. But I pulled 140% count because we didn't have a rogue and we had like 8 Void Emissaries to kill on the way to the last boss from the start of the dungeon. And I had to pull every single pack. Like, there's nothing I could have skipped or chosen to skip. I had to pull 140% of the dungeon, which is pretty ridiculous design.
Yeah, Temple's kind of always been like that, but the addition of emissaries has made it worse. It used to be like 120%, but now there's just extra count from these emissaries. And if you don't have skips, it's really rough. But if you don't have skips, like that bottom pack, you can just pull it out of line of the void, for instance, if you've just killed everything normally. So like the count is bad, but at least it's probably easier to deal with these voids because you can pull stuff away from them that you just don't have any space when you're skipping with shrouds, all that stuff. Okay. Anyways, we've talked about Void Week a lot in the past, but I guess it's just kind of a reiteration that it does suck, and people are doing some extreme things to beat it. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's transition now briefly to talking about Blood of the Enemy, which this also applies to, I think, Artifice of Time and Sphere of Suppression, the healer and tank versions of this essence, respectively. This is the essence that you get from Battlegrounds, and the rank 3 version, which especially for Blood of the Enemy, rank 3 is really necessary for anybody who would use this essence. It's almost like so much of the value comes from that 3rd rank on the major. So it's not really something that you can kind of do half the farm for. The farm has been nerfed from 50,000 honor to 30,000 honor, which is a pretty big nerf. However, there are some offsetting like buffs to the grind. Some of the quests, like there were weekly epic battleground quests that would count for 1,500 or 1,000 honor, and those no longer count towards this achievement. And mercenary mode benefits also don't count towards this achievement anymore. So it's still, I think, a little bit of a longer grind than if you'd done it over the first couple weeks and had done those epic BG quests and done it all in mercenary mode. But 30,000 is a lot more manageable than 50,000. I personally finally did this grind from 0 to 30,000 over the past week. And it took me about 25 or 30 hours of Battlegrounds. And I wasn't stacked in a group either. I could have done it faster if I'd been playing like with a group of skilled PvPers. But one problem, like a couple times I did 5 stacks with friends and we actually lost like almost all those games because it matches you up against enemy pre-mades. Yeah. And so like I think the game is actually a lot harder if you're trying to like not coordinate and just do it, without thinking. And then you queue up with some friends. And actually I think it makes it harder because you're likely to play against better people that way. So I think solo queuing is the way if you're not going to like hard game it with friends that are trying really hard.
How much quicker does BG Weekend make it compared to...
BG Weekend is 50% bonus honor in the BGs. So it would have taken an extra 10 hours or something, I think, with that not active. Okay. However, first win of the day bonuses do count towards the achievement, and first win of the day bonuses are pretty substantial. So if you're interested in farming this more slowly, I think the minimum total hours would involve just doing one BG, or doing your first win each day of both regular and epic battlegrounds. I think that would be the fastest way in terms of like time invested, but you would have to do it over the course of a couple weeks. That's what I think I would do. I think if I was interested in getting like Sphere of Suppression on my monk, for instance, and Blood of the Enemy, which would be pretty good value.
Just blood.
Well, I don't know. Sphere strikes me as the kind of essence that might be strong in raid randomly. Like there might be one fight where you just randomly want Sphere Suppression.
Yeah, that's true.
Next tier.
It's a very niche use, and I thought I'd use it a lot more in keys at the beginning of the season. And I used it for like one match in MDI when it was necrotic bursting, I think, just to like make it easier to kite.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I only use it for one minor essence for freehold on live keys on my monk. And so there's no way I'm going to farm rank 3 Sphere. There's just no point. Also, it doesn't get really any better at rank 2 and rank 3 for Sphere. It adds like extends the buff from you being hit and getting haste from 5 to 7 seconds, I think, which you're getting hit all the time, so you have the buff anyway.
Okay, so at least that's something you could just do the Storming the Battlegrounds quest and do one of each BG and a PvP island and get most of the way there. That's nice,
rank 1 Sphere is probably good enough.
Yeah, that's definitely not true for Blood of the Enemy. If you're like an Outlaw Rogue and you're looking to get Blood of the Enemy, it's not going to be better than like Focusing Iris unless you get it up to rank 3. And then it will be a lot better.
Protocol.
Yeah, Purification Protocol. That one's nice as well because it doesn't trigger the on-death affixes anymore when it annihilates stuff. So you can just randomly annihilate like a hard bolstering pull and not get the bolstering.
Hey, wait, maybe that's the play. Hold on.
Honestly,
and it can annihilate voids.
I wanted to try this in season 2 not season 2, but like when Essences first came out and we still had triple Outlaw Rogue meta before they got nerfed.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to have all 3 Outlaw Rogues run Purification Major and just slam their Purification on a random pack that we weren't going to pull every time it's up and then vanish to just try and
annihilate stuff. Nice.
Yeah, just collect some count every time you do a pull and just go back to your normal route and maybe skip 2 packs at the end if you're lucky. I really wanted to try that.
That is a very cool idea, yeah. I kind of want to try that too.
I hate you all.
I think it's good, honestly. If it works out consistently with 3 players doing it, it could actually be better.
Maybe. Yeah, God, that would be so obnoxious to be like see like working, but that'd be actually hilarious.
So overall, I think the Blood of the Enemy nerf is a good thing. I think we can all kind of agree that it was egregious. I think it's
Yeah.
still too much.
I don't know, man, because if you compare it to Purification Protocol or Memory of Lucid Dreams or anything else, it's about the equivalent. It's about equivalent in time.
It's just that you can do it all at once, so it does and it's not like something where you easily have like a daily amount. I guess you could, if you think about it as just doing your first one of the day, like it would take as long.
People are just gorging themselves on content that they don't like is part
Yeah.
of the problem with Blood of the Enemy, I would say. Like they make galvanic oscillators like craftable. Same with like being able to farm spare parts, but you see very few people out here farming spare parts in Mechagon, but I guess I did put in the show notes. Flex is farming spare parts in Mechagon, but that's for rep for next tier.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. He's got this tweet here that says, "I need help." His bags are just full of these spare parts, things that turn into spare parts. And that's because you can turn this into rep, and that can turn into Paragon boxes. So next patch, that will be worth AP. So this is effectively a way that you can start farming AP for the next patch now. And one thing we've learned is that if you give people a way to get power level next patch, even at like a 1 to 1,000 rate of how fast they'll be able to actually gain the AP if they spend the time next patch, they're going to do it because that this is a way to meaningfully make progress towards the next world first race now, and Flex is going to try and do that. So
yeah, well, Flex is known for doing some bullshit like this every single tier.
Yep. There's a couple goblins in both like Method and Limit that do this kind of stuff.
THD, I'm sure will have fucking infinite amounts of resources as well.
Yeah, I think that guy has like 7 characters now at neck level 70 or something.
I just got neck level 70 on my main yesterday. What? He has 7?
I think I'm 68 on my main.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Tells I think that's true. You know what? I'm not sure.
That's insane.
But that man spends time in islands like just kind of unironically these days. Like I think he just enjoys them now.
Did you know that after the world first kill of Queen Ishara, that all the other guys went out and went drinking and stuff like that, and THD stayed to farm islands?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe he is just an enigma.
What if we got THD and Flex on the show at the same time, and we just got tips and tricks on how to stay motivated to farm ridiculous stuff?
You think that they could give up an hour of their time to be on our show? Have you seen that they are just in Mechagon 24/7?
They would be farming mid-show and wouldn't be able to
answer
questions.
Well, I bet they could effectively be on the show while farming. Okay, so I guess let's quickly talk a little bit about account-wide essences, because Blood of the Enemy and the others are ones that people are annoyed about the length of the grind, and I think it's reasonable to be annoyed about the length of some of these grinds. I think Blood of the Enemy, Purification Protocol, Memory of Lucid Dreams. Actually, you know what? I'll take it back on Memory of Lucid Dreams. I think that one's okay, but
I think Memory of Lucid Dreams is like 3 weeks, isn't it?
It's 6,000 rep, so 20 days of doing the ally quests. But Purification Protocol is a lot more than that.
That's 3 ally quests every day in Nashatar, right?
Yeah.
For the followers,
literally almost 3 full weeks.
I think the by the time I finished Memory of Lucid Dreams 3, though, I was still only like revered in my Mechagon rep. So I think the Purification Protocol is like twice as long, unless you're like if you're getting the full amount of Mechagon rep every day, you can do it faster. Or if you farm the spare parts, but that's like a lot more commitment than just doing 3 ally quests every day. And the ally quests also progress the storyline in Nashatar, right? Like you need to get 3,000 ally rep from allies just to advance the quest line in that area. And so I don't have a huge problem with Lucid Dreams, but I think that the 2 rep ones that are gated behind Exalted, so that's the Unbound Force as well, which is not really good for DPS specs, but like Aegis of the Deep is for tanks. And
I was going to say, Aegis and Memory of Lucid Dreams, at least you can kind of farm concurrently.
Yeah, that's true.
You got to look at Mechagon to farm Nullberry, and you're like, oh, jeez, that's just for the 1 essence, and I got to spend days and days farming.
Mhm.
So as somebody who plays a bunch of different specs and different classes, Ratnus, how do you feel about account-wide essences at this point?
I don't think that they should be account wide in the sense that like you unlock it on one character, you unlock it on everybody.
Right.
I do think that a catch up mechanism, like if you unlock it on one character, it's half as much to get it on the next character. That would be reasonable. I think that would be a really nice way to make it less bad.
So catch up in the purest term, not catch up in terms of pearl farming for benthic gear prior to the raid.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to see something like the like the Mists model, where when you got exalted, you could double the speed that you gained rep on your alts, or
Oh, that would be interesting.
it's kind of like how you know how if you get Purification Protocol rank 3, the spare parts cost for the other, like for the tank and healer essences, goes down a lot for the essences for your off specs. It does, and it's true for like if you're trying to get like if you have Azeroth's Undying Gift and you want to get Condensed Life Force and you already have Azeroth's Undying Gift 3, the Condensed Life Force takes a lot less Aqueous Reliquaries to craft. So some kind of system like that's account wide instead of just based on the specs on your character already, where it costs half as much to get rank 3 if you already have it on one character. I think that would be good. I don't like the idea that is floating around a lot on Twitter of rank 4 being relevant for gameplay. I think that rank 4 being cosmetic only thing is the only thing that like is really good. And when you have something that was originally cosmetic only and then you add power level to it later, I think that that's a bad direction to go. So I think that the rank 4 idea is something they should stay away from.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think I like the middle of the ground ideas for the essences being nerfed for once you attain like rank 3 on your main. I like the half requirement that you suggested right now. So I also like if it just automatically let you unlock rank 2, but then had the full grind to rank 3. Maybe in some cases that's more extreme than others.
So the issue with that realistically is going to be like half of these are rep gated, so it's not going to actually help you get rank 3 any quicker, but it's only going to help you get rank 2. And it feels like the issue for most people that they're having right now is that their alts aren't up to the power level of their mains. I feel like most people are actually okay with doing the grind on one character that they deem their main, but once they have to factor in like alts into it, then it starts to become a little bit more problematic because World of Warcraft has a very strict culture of everything has to be min-maxed to the absolute utmost degree for your character to be even deemed close to relevant. So if you don't have everything that is in fact available to you, then you are just basically hindering the group and you're kind of trolling in some way. Whereas, hey, maybe taking Essence of the Focusing Iris on your Outlaw Rogue may not actually be the worst possible thing, especially whenever he doesn't want to farm blood of the enemy for 10 hours or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I did that for a long time, but I felt really bad about it. I felt like I was trolling the group to not have blood of the enemy.
Well, that's just a culture thing with how World of Warcraft works. Like, basically, the method guys and the limit guys put this ridiculous ass standard over time, and it's just like it's not even just us guys. It's literally just like the community.
I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to do like rank 1 or close to rank 1 keys, though, I think it's reasonable to be like, hey, you need like the best items you can get, like.
Bro, Trell is literally fucking 440 item level.
Yeah, but he's got the like all the grinds that he can reasonably do to increase the power level of his character. He's done, right? Like Mythic raiding and killing the hard bosses on Mythic is something that he's not done, but like everything else is really within his own power.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I am definitely a little lower gear than I should be for doing like 23s and 24s, and we can tell in our group a couple of us were the last push week. And it was kind of straining, but like we can still make it without hardcore Mythic rating by the next time it comes around. Like if I wasn't doing MDI, I think we could have been close or like 1 or 2 eye levels below what fully geared top of the top raiders were on the last push week, and I think we can get there by the next one if that makes sense.
I feel like skill like literally outweighs it until you are literally pushing these rank 1 keys, though.
Yeah.
So just take Trell completely out of the equation. Think about literally everybody who's doing 18s to 10s, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes, taking Trell out of the equation. Think about literally everybody who's doing 18s to 10s to 18s. Why do they need like rank 3 of everything on their alts and like everything else?
Well,
like, what's the real point in really slamming down the grind for blood 3 on their Outlaw Rogue alt? Because I mean, that's just not fun to farm. Like, what's the point of me really farming Purification Protocol on my Trap Demon Hunter that I'm rarely going to play?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know, having the powerful stuff, having the cool thing from the patch, and feeling powerful and not feeling like there's like every time you open and log into your character feeling like there's some big power that you're missing. Like, I think that's worthwhile. I think that Blizzard should make that more, especially like, I don't know, it feels like they kind of flip-flop on how hard alts are to maintain, like just kind of randomly between patches. So like in 8.1 it was pretty easy to maintain alts, right? Like you just had your alt and you got some Azerite by doing weekly keys and you were good.
Neck level.
So now you just have like 5 characters that you like and you play on and they're fun and they feel almost as good as your main. And then this patch rolls around and now Blizzard's like, okay, it's a hard patch for alts, please pay me these 50 hours so that your alts will be viable. I
guess more of my point is it perception or is it actually that much worse?
I don't think it would be actually that much worse. Like, I don't think you'd be that much lower power level on your alts, a couple percent. But I think it's reasonable that people feel bad about being worse on their alts, given that it keeps changing how hard alts are to maintain. So I think consistency there would be a really good thing, like not kind of changing how hard it is to keep alts up, or if anything, making it easier over the course of the expansion rather than harder.
Yeah. Another question that I put in our show notes is, so people in Legion, I don't know if people in chat remember, or people who are listening remember, people complained about the legendary system not being targeted, and you weren't visually rewarded for getting progression towards legendaries, and they hated just like the RNG and the bad luck protection system. Obviously, once the currency was introduced, it was a little bit different, but people complained about not being able to see like their visual progression on it. But now that we do see the visual progression on what is effectively legendaries, people are still complaining about having to actually do the grind. So like, do people really want their progression to be visible, or is it more or less like they don't want to do BGs or they don't want to farm Mechagon for it? They would rather just do Mythic Plus and raid for it.
I mean, me personally, I'm like a prime example of this. I'll log onto my Druid this week because I didn't really want to play my main too much because it's a bad week for pushing, so I was just playing Barrier or Boomkin or whatever. But I log on and I look at Mechagon, and I can't even zone in yet because I haven't started the quest to get there. And I can't do it. I can't start the grind. There's so much to grind. Essences, Benthic gear for raid, Azerite pieces from Mythic raid if possible. You got neck level. That's easier now with the catch mechanic there at least. But everything else combined is just so much. And I was thinking back to Legion, where if I were to log on my bear at the same moment in Legion, I could have just queued up for a random heroic and started farming for legendaries. Like any given content would have been fine that I wanted to do. And the fact is, I just don't want to grind certain zones or reputation or quest lines. Honestly, I want to just do content.
Yeah,
I should say dungeon content.
I'm not sure it's the visibility that people are reacting to negatively about the essences. I think it is that, like, okay, this essence that is really good for me is behind BGs or is behind rep. And in Legion, you could just do Mythic Plus and get all your legendaries eventually by doing that, right? Like, you were making progress towards your BIS by doing anything, but now you only make progress towards your BIS essences by doing the specific thing that grinds for those. So I think the visibility is not the problem. I think it's the, like, having to do content you don't want to do to get the items.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously a very fair point.
But I think you have a good point too, that like this is kind of the fix. Like that's if you were looking to design a visible way to get at legendaries, this is it, right? This is like, okay, here's like a legendary length of quest to do to get this item. Like they're kind of like just a bunch of long legendary quest lines or whatever. That it doesn't feel as special or anything, but Legion legendaries didn't feel that special either, like compared to the old legendaries as well. So I think it's pretty close to those.
Yeah, I mean they do feel similar to what legendaries were.
All right, let's move on to our next topic, which is people going Alliance. So Dr. J, Zmock, Now, Shelley, these people are all going Alliance over on EU. So here I have, if we go over to Raider.io, we can see the best runs of this week. And if you look at this little symbol here, almost all of these top runs are Alliance runs. There is one heroic group here in these top 8 runs that has completed, that's keeping up on Horde side. Holding the Horde standard. That now falls to you and me, actually, Tettles. You and I are the
Wait, we're in that group?
yeah. This is our Told to War 22. The
Shit.
only horde run in the top 8 here. So we're like the horde standard bearers from that cinematic that you love so much, the lore cinematic that just came out in 8.2.5.
Check out that Talazar 23 on Void Week, man. That's just only possible with Shadowmeld.
Yeah, so this is this is Now's group here with Zamok, but a lot of EU people, Dr. J as well. Like these people are all going Alliance now. That kind of the whole community of really high end EU keyers is moving over to Ally, and you can see if you scroll down here, like most of the top runs this week are these Alliance groups. Even if you go into the second page, like it's Alliance pretty much all the way down.
All right. So you want to know something funny?
Sure.
They actually plan on going Alliance every single week, and Dr. J has a donation goal on his stream that people fill up for him every week so that he can afford to transfer back and forth.
I saw that this morning. It's such a good idea, but it's so limited to streamers. I just feel bad reading it. Like he's gonna have to transfer back on Tuesday or Wednesday for EU to raid with his guild, and then on Thursday when it comes around or whenever they're done raiding, he goes back to Alliance, pays them money, and does.
Dude, I would honestly be down to do that for like a push week. I don't know about every week. Every week seems a bit much for me. I would 100% be down to do that for a push week if I had a consistent group to play with over the whole entire week, and I would not even.
I would too, honestly.
Yeah, I think that there are murmurings about doing this on North American Horde, like the next skittish, or sorry, next bursting volcanic fortified enchanted week.
Okay, so not the Sanguine Grievous Fort Arcane week that's coming up, like the week before BlizzCon.
Maybe I haven't heard as much about that one. That week is less good.
That one is in 2 weeks, but yeah, it is less good. However, it is closer. So
yeah, I mean
maybe every fucking push week just YOLO it and just like ship all of the 20 to 25ish players that do top end keys on NA. Just ship them all Horde or ship them all Alliance.
I just feel it's just so pay to win. Like I really wish it wasn't a possible thing. It's really not on paper. Like people look at that and they're like, why would we ever pay double character transfers just to do keys for a week? But we're actually talking about doing this, and it's kind of funny to me, and I really don't like it.
Well,
I kind of want to do it.
All right. Well, this is a really good segue into our next topic, which is the fix system changes.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, the big fix to this is Shadowmeld. Like Shadowmeld is the problem here. It's not the Affixes, right? Like partially it's the Affixes, but
it's partially the Affixes.
Like Reaping was almost this good for Meld also, right?
Okay, sure. Okay, if you can't meld off Beguiling, then it's really not that big of a deal. But as it currently stands, it feels like Meld is literally like 300 to 400 points like of IO score, just like difference. Plus, it makes Void Week playable, whereas Void Week right now is literally just like not playable.
Yeah. So
I think it's insane for bolstering. As long as bolstering is the Affix, it's still going to be just absolutely incredible.
You can just meld in this.
Oh, sure, of course. Like it's always going to be good for some stuff, but Arcane Torrent is good in some situations too, like the Watery Dome or the King's Rest Voidlings. Like there's always going to be some things that racials are good for. Dwarf racial is always good for some stuff too. Like
right, those racials are good, but sure. Shadowmeld is orders of magnitude better than those. Maybe in King's Rest in particular, it's like close. Which one's better between Torrent and?
I would agree. Like Shadowmeld is definitely orders of magnitude better, but I mean, just completely dismissing like other it's because of the strategies that you have to implement, not necessarily because of how.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, though. It is the Affixes as well. Like, if Affixes didn't exist, Meld would be... I think it would still be maybe the best racial, but it would be closer. It would be very close. It wouldn't be insane.
The neutral thing I could think of for Meld would be, like, skipping True Sight mobs, and also for threat on Holy DKs. On Holy DK would actually be really viable if everyone was Alliance on live and they had Shadow Meld, because they could do their burst whenever they wanted and just still live. In MDI, there's an issue. If they didn't meld at a certain global inside their burst window, they would just die to threat. Even with a Prot Warrior on non-skittish with a Rogue fully geared, tricksing everything to them, the DK would still get threat and die.
Yeah, I mean, Meld is also good for just some boss mechanics, right? Like, you just get targeted by a pistol shot or whatever on Eudora and you meld. Like, there's good things about Meld in other places too, but I think it's fair in those ways. Like it's just not fair the way it deals with
for
beguiling.
getting rid of drain fluid, it's like
Yeah,
that's good ability. That is the way meld should be used.
that seems fair. Yeah, that seems fair compared to Torrent and Stoneform or whatever. So, okay, but let's move on to talking about the Affix system. So I guess we can talk a little. I don't want this to just be complaining about the current Affix system. So let's do this instead in kind of like a here's what we would do. Here's our proposals for how to make the system better. What we would do if we were in charge of M+ next expansion. So Tettles, what would be your top priority thing to do with Mythic Plus and the Affix system next expansion?
So the absolute top thing that I would 100% do is add a leaderboard. It would give an end game to Mythic Plus that is beyond the MDI, because as it currently stands, the only end game for Mythic Plus is either pushing Raider IO score or the MDI for a lot of players. And if you just added in a leaderboard and like added some like cosmetic rewards, because people love cosmetic rewards, it seems like that would fix a lot of issues that are currently plaguing the community. Just like that one change would be like monumental.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about such a leaderboard and how it would be really good if it had a way to remove the kind of push week phenomenon that we have on live.
Yeah.
Because as it is right now on live, like most of the high-end community is really interested in playing on push week and really not interested in playing on not push week. So the bad Affix weeks, like people will mess up their sleep schedule and play 12 hours a day or whatever during push week, and then this week rolls around or whatever is Void week, and just we're making podcasts or whatever, we're not playing World of Warcraft.
You're calling me out about the push week stuff.
No, I mean I do too. Like it's you do what you can to play when the affixes are good, because they're not always good, and there's not really like, because the Raider IO leaderboard is the kind of the only end game that we have right now for it. The only way to push that really is on push weeks, and
yeah. And so adding a new leaderboard and, like Dratna said, fixing how the dungeons are being scored would be a pretty like high top priority, to where people don't only play 3 weeks out of the season or whatever. How many push weeks do we actually have right now?
I'd say
think
two. There's tyrannical push week and fortified push week. But
okay, so there's 2 legitimate push weeks and probably 3 like lesser push weeks that are like good and playable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still always of the mindset that I'd rather play than not, but others are just only looking for score, which whenever you're only looking for score, then it's really rough.
Yeah, and the problem is, like, you need 5 people for your keys, so even if you want to play as much as normal on every week, like, the rest of the community being less interested means that you do less keys on bad weeks, even if you would like to continue doing them, all day every day.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. So, Dretnos, how would you fix scoring dungeons in a way that would allow people to actually play week in and week out?
So yeah, if I was designing the Blizzard leaderboard, I would have there being like score based on how well you did in that dungeon relative to everybody else that week. So you could, if you wanted to do it a Blizzard-y kind of way, you could do it somewhat like the Mist challenge mode, where you would get like a title for having the best run on a server for each dungeon, some kind of reward for having the best run of a dungeon on your server each week. Would be pretty cool. Basically the priority for the leaderboard is that it like, because weeks are going to be different in difficulty, you want to make sure that people are incentivized to play as high as they can each week. Right now, it feels like doing a 22 on a bad week is a lot worse than doing a 24 on a good week, for instance. And, the same is true for a group that can do 20s or 18s between those weeks, or 15s and 13s, right? Whatever those specific numbers are. It feels a lot worse to be doing the dungeon 2 levels lower on a bad week. But if you design the system so that you're not competing against every week's runs, you're only competing against other runs from that week, you instead will have people interested in doing as well as they can on each given week. However, there are a lot of different ideas. We've had some discussion in our Discord to make that exact system work. Some kind of like percentile system where you get scored based on, all the runs from that week get put on a list next to each other based on which keystone level they were done and then how fast they were done within that keystone level. And you get a percentile ranking based on where your run falls in that list. And your best percentile ranking for each dungeon, regardless of which week it was done on, is your score for that dungeon. That kind of idea. So like a top score would be an 100 for each dungeon. Some people like the idea of even requiring you to have multiple different weeks on your score, so you can't just do it all in one week. I don't even care about that. I'd be fine with like whatever week you can get all the dungeons done at the best possible level is fine. Like if you could do it all in 1 week, go for it. But I think most people would just need multiple weeks to get top runs anyway, or close to it.
Or you're just a high-end Mythic Raider Dratnos, and you get all of your gear, and then you ram through all of the dungeons the second week whenever you are monumentally overgeared. And
well, okay, if you're a high-end Mythic Raider who gets all the Mythic gear in the first week, aren't you going to be busy with raid and like stuff those weeks? Aren't you going to be grinding lower level keys to be getting gear instead of actually trying to push that week?
That's why I think it should be an average of like your top 3 weeks, like regardless of Affix, your top 3.
I think
weeks.
that if you are worried about people having gear and overgearing in the first couple weeks, you can just make the leaderboards not start for the first month of the raid being out. Just have it be like a preseason or whatever.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, it's another way. I like the idea either way though of having something to work toward every week instead of waiting for the one push week. At the beginning of the expansion, there was the race for server first 15 key.
Yeah, that was so fun.
That
was so fun.
Super fun, and I wish that was a thing every other week, or at least more often than once every 2 years when an expansion drops.
Mm-hmm. Even something as small as like making there be seasonal Realm First 15 achievements or seasonal Realm First 20 or whatever number makes it a fun race. Like doing that every patch would just be that would be a lot. That would go a long way towards having like a fun event. Trying to get those and if those had a title and stuff. But yeah, I think a big thing would be to add titles, transmog, mounts, all these to a reward system, make it kind of comparable to at least PvP in terms of how much rewards these have.
I think it's interesting like how much they've taken away from like server identity of players. Like they used to have like specific battlegrounds for PvP. Obviously like the Realm First achievements for Mythic Plus were pretty sick. The Realm First achievements for Raid were also pretty cool, but they even converted the Realm First achievement for Raid into like the Hall of Fame leaderboard stuff, right?
I do think a Hall of Fame style system is kind of better for modern WoW because server identity is kind of messed up when there are some servers like Illidan or Tyke or whatever, and some servers like Crush Ridge where there's just nobody else playing there and you could just do anything and be fine. Shout out to Undead TV. Formerly
Shout
of
out
Crush
two
Ridge.
dads of Crush Ridge, yeah.
So I think that some kind of Hall of Fame model instead of a Realm First model is totally fine for anything that you would want a Realm First for. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the kind of the back end system that I think would go well with a new Affix system, but let's talk a little bit about the Affixes in particular. Right now, there are kind of some Affixes on this calendar that are just way more of an Affix than other ones. I would say that the worst ones are Void Week. If you count Beguiling Void as like a separate affix than the other Beguiling Weeks, I think that's like probably the single worst one on the calendar, unless you're an Alliance person, in which case King's Honor friend. Grievous, Grievous is one that puts a pretty serious cap on keys.
All right. So we got Void. I think we got Tyrannical right below that.
Yep. Quaking, I'd put Quaking pretty high up actually on the like awful affixes.
Okay, so then Quaking below Tyrannical, right?
Mm-hmm. And then maybe like
probably what it is.
Then maybe like Grievous. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And everything
Grievous
else
is pretty situational, but yeah, Grievous for sure in some cases.
Necrotic can also be Necrotic and Grievous I'd put in kind of a similar tier. I actually don't mind those affixes. Teaming is
actually so fucking bad. No.
It's true. We've got teaming.
Okay. So how about
that is right.
Void, Tyrannical, Quaking, Teaming? Does that sound good, or do you want to swap Teaming and Quaking? I could go either way on that.
I put Teaming above Quaking. Teaming is actually so bad. I'm still used to Legion teaming, where Teaming, I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, that's playable week, and then I get in there and I'm just like, this is absolutely not playable. What was I thinking?
Yeah, this happens to you every single teaming week. Every single teaming week, on Tuesday, you just are like bright-eyed and looking forward to keys. And then Wednesday rolls around and you're just like beaten up. You're just there. You're just like,
there's too many lieutenant mobs, man.
Yeah.
No.
You just have to fight twice as many like Ashvane commanders or.
Why is there a witch here?
Yeah.
Why is this pack triple in size?
Oh my god, dude.
1.5.
Why is there a 5 dervishes?
Yeah. So okay, I'm willing to do that. And then by contrast, there are some kind of non-affixes. I would say like volcanic,
yeah,
skittish, raging. Okay, raging is kind of medium. Like raging can be relevant, but it's pretty easy to play around. Like most groups have a druid, and you can soothe it, and then the soothe removes almost all of the worst of raging. Bolstering is something that like it slows you down. It takes time to make a route around it, but at least in a high level group, you can play around it pretty effectively.
Point I wanted to make was on death affixes are significantly worse for pugs than they are for high level coordinated groups, so our perception is always going to be skewed for that.
Yes,
kind of stuff,
I think bolstering is like really hated amongst the like pugging community because just like turning your brain off and running through a dungeon is a lot worse when there's bolstering active. You can't chain pull, you can't like accidentally get in combat with stuff halfway through a pull and be fine.
Same with bursting and sanguine, man. Like roll that bursting stack or
I think sanguine is pretty similar to whoa, Trell. Okay.
What's going on with the
All right, well, that just happened.
Oh, welcome back. I think bursting in particular is a great example of an affix that's way worse for pugs than high level keys, because bursting actually does the same amount of damage to your group in a 10 as it does in the 20, right? It actually does more DPS as well because you're doing the dungeon faster. And you might roll the stack, so you might actually do more damage to your group. So you like bursting is just actually an affix that's way harder in a lower key than in a higher key, which is interesting. It's kind of the only affix that is like that.
I think bolstering can be the same way. By the time you like pull one mob that's kind of far from the next pack to the next pack, the mob's like almost dead on a lower key, and then bolstering is you might as well just pull it alone, because if you're going to pull a low mob into a pack, everything's going to be bolstered right away. I did this last night on my bear. I was like trying to show the group I was about to pull the next pack, and by the time I just auto ran to the next pack, it was at 30%. I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do?
Okay, so to be totally fair, at least bursting this time around is a little bit better this patch because of healer power being increased by essences.
Yeah, the last patch it was really rough to like bursting would be active and you just it was so much damage and your healer was just there working with like nothing to heal you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tyrannical and fortified, because every time we talk about affixes, we talk about deleting these.
Yes. The age-old, our tentpole topic. This is where we draw our line in the sand. Delete tyrannical and fortified.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Too many affixes per week, and dropping that one baseline would be nice, in my opinion, still.
I think that that's a good idea. I think that like the identity between tyrannical and fortified being different and like kind of having it feel different is nice, but I don't think it's worth how warping it is to dungeons. And I think it puts a pretty serious cap on like how hard they can make bosses and how hard they can make trash, because like if something is going to be doable on tyrannical, if a boss is going to be doable on tyrannical, it's hard for it to be hard on fortified. Like you can't really have a whole dungeon being hard and interesting if it's going to be able, like if half of it has to be scaled up on some weeks and the other half on other weeks. Like you just kind of get to this point where on tyrannical you're kind of asleep for, well, you're not really asleep for trash, but trash is a lot easier. And on fortified you're asleep for bosses. And that also tyrannical just bosses take so long now too. So I think that I think
the damage modifier isn't even that bad on tyrannical. The health modifier is what's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, 5-6 minute boss fights are pretty miserable after a while. It can give you some hand cramps if you're a tank having to backpedal for 5 minutes straight on both call and a triangle.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd rather be a 3-minute fight.
We know what happens with Trell and triangles, so he's just off that platform into the water.
That's true.
Yikes.
To be honest though, I think there are too many affixes that change how dungeons are week to week. In Legion it was nice because it was like fortified, tyrannical, and that was like the major change for the week. But now in BFA we have Void Emissaries, Tide Emissaries week, and Enchanted Emissaries week that rotates, as well as fortified and tyrannical. And on top of that, you also have things like freehold mobs change every week, the bosses and the council change. There's so much variability. I think a little bit less would be nice, and this would be the easiest way, in my opinion, removing fortified tyrannical.
I do wonder how more casual level players feel about it though, because the dungeons do get very stale for them, especially if they're only going to see one dungeon per week, and if their only goal is to do 110 just to get the weekly key done. It could get pretty stale, and I did hear about that from Reaping, like that everything felt the exact same whenever you're doing these dungeons on lower level. So making sure that it did stay fresh was pretty important to them. I wonder how they feel about that now. that I'm
I
now
think
that we're
that-
looking back on it.
I think having weekly variability in the seasonal affix is a good place for it. Like that's fine. I think it's better than trying to just have it be, because I think Fortified and Tyrannical is a lot more boring than like a seasonal affix being different each week. So I think there should only be one of those, and between the two, I prefer it being on the seasonal affix.
Yeah, that's my opinion exactly.
All right, so that's Fortified and Tyrannical. Let's kind of go affix by affix and talk about what we would do with each of these, whether we would nerf them, whether we'd buff them. Let's start by talking about bolstering, because that is active this week. That's one of the level 4 affixes. I think the bolstering is in a pretty good place right now. I do think it's a little bit punishing when it goes bad. So I think that putting a time, like having the debuff have a timer on it, would be a pretty fair way. Like just 20 seconds on bolstering, and then it falls off, and it refreshes anytime the thing gets bolstered. I think that would go a long way to making this affix good.
I do also think the way that they aggressively approached it towards the beginning of the expansion, where they were making non-important mobs not bolster, was also a decent approach. But they would need to go back through and like re-hit the dungeons again, like because there's still stuff that bolsters.
Minions of Zool.
Minions of Zool is like a good one. The dogs and Wakecrest Manor.
Tide Sage Initiate.
Revelers and Wakecrest. What was I gonna say? Even the piglets and Wakecrest, they're so minor. I mean, those are just half health.
I'm kind of fine with those. Yeah, half health still bolstering is I think enough to make it interesting. It's just when
I think it depends on the mob. For me, it depends on like what they do.
Footmen and Siege. That was what I was thinking of. Footmen and Siege, please. There's so many packs with like 4 footmen in them.
Again, for me, it depends on what the mob does. Like the pigs do the snout smack, the footmen do the cut. So those are kind of interesting. The dogs don't do anything. The Minions of Zool don't do anything.
Tide Sage Initiates don't do anything.
Sage Initiates, yes.
Those actually don't do anything. Those definitely not bolster. Yeah, every other little mob has like one little thing they do. Like the dogs do bite and give an extra damage attack on the tank. The Revelers and Wakecrest, I don't even know if the Revelers do anything actually.
They revel, Trell. Yeah.
They're rowdy.
But I think any mob that's like less than half health of the mobs around it should be considered to not bolster. I think they should still burst. I just don't think they should bolster.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So treating the on-death affixes differently. I think that's reasonable actually, because I think bolstering is more impactful than bursting and sanguine. Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I think I agree though. The time on the expiration would also be a decent choice as well.
Yeah, I could see either way.
Let's talk a little bit about raging, because raging is dispellable. Do you guys think that raging should be dispellable?
Okay, so I got this one. No, raging should not be dispellable. The mob should be balanced. There's no reason that Shadow of Zool should like one-shot your tank if he's enraged. There's no reason that the mech jockey is going to instantly kill your melee with a grease gun if he's enraged. I feel like raging shouldn't increase their damage. It should probably just increase their cast speed on something. Like that would be an interesting if it was spell haste. Like, can you imagine that instead?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, Shadow Zool would still murder your tank if it had spell haste, right?
Okay. You need to nerf Shadow of Zool. That is a completely separate issue.
Yeah, I think that raging should not be dispellable either. I don't think that it should just be like, okay, this week you need a druid or hunter, or else your group comp is invalid. So I think this is a problem that I have with a lot of these affixes, is that a lot of the affixes say that you need specific classes, and usually the specific classes it needs is a Resto Druid or a rogue, an outlaw rogue,
or monk.
There are just randomly affixes that already the best specs for M+ are the best specs against those affixes. I'm thinking like Grievous for Resto Druid, for instance, or Explosive for Outlaw Rogue, like randomly Outlaw is just the spec that has the easiest time with Explosive, and so it's just these affixes that are already, or these specs that are already good are just the best ways to deal with these affixes too. So I think
whenever they're dungeon testing all of these affixes, they're playing. I feel like they have to be playing these specs, right? Like
I think they're just doing it on 10s. They're doing these dungeons on 10s, and they're not really they don't really care if it makes it 20% faster or slower because it's still within the timer.
All right, bro, how the fuck are they gonna kill Explosive on a 10?
Explosive has low health on a 10. You know, anybody can kill him, or you can just let a couple of them explode.
Okay, maybe that's the solution. On a 10, if you have a Warlock, an Ellie Shaman, and I don't know, let's say
the tank
the tank can kill him.
10, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. A tank can kill them on like a
Tank
10.
and one melee could call the orbs for sure.
Mhm.
like a red pally or
And
something. But,
the
you
problem
know,
is, like,
one frost
when
shock
they-
probably from an Ellie Shaman does it, so it's not bad. Like the problem with Ellie Shaman killing explosives is that it's 3 frost shocks and a high key unless you crit one of them.
Yeah, then it's just not worth. You don't do any damage.
yeah,
That-
shit.
When they test on a 10, though, like say Shadow Azul, what we were talking about before, when it enrages, it just goes from hitting the tank for like 10% of their HP to 20% of their HP.
Yeah,
so
now-
it doesn't even look that bad.
Now the tank needs to use defensives or whatever when it's enraged, but on live regularly you just need to use defensives all the time, and then raging comes around, and if your defensive is not divine shield, you are dead.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
I think a lot of these issues would be solved if they tested on like 18s or higher than the current meta achievement is for 15. So if they just did that plus a few levels, they'd probably get better results in their QA. But we don't have any control over that. So
yeah, testing
next
it like
Affix?
testing at MDI level would be a pretty good way to do this as well, right? Like,
Yeah,
and then saying like,
think-
hey, any higher than MDI level, like if stuff's not balanced, then okay.
I mean, I think you just have to be able to equate it to lower level too for like what's actually
Yeah,
fair.
that's the thing is that like it is important that the dungeons are good and fun and interesting on 10s, and like that's a valid goal too. So like testing on both, and I don't know, like having some specific abilities or mobs, like if mobs had a variable that was how quickly they scaled, like a scaling factor, and you just gave Shadow Azul a smaller scaling factor, like you could just go in and specifically change, like, okay, this certain mob is hard on a 10 because we want this mob to be interesting and flavorful, and like the group is going to use their cooldowns here on a 10, and you're going to be fine, and it's going to be way harder than the rest of the dungeon on a 10, like that's fine, but you just have to make it scale less quickly then, so that it is not, because all the groups are like that on a 20, and if then Shadow Azul just becomes absurd. Let's talk a little bit about Sanguine. I like Sanguine the way it is now. I think that it's good. I think that they could slightly nerf how quickly it applies. Like just give us like an extra second before it starts taking effect, and we'd be good, because it does feel pretty bad sometimes. But outside of that, I think that Sanguine being like in the state it is now is probably it's probably a really good place for the Affix. So
Yeah, the arm time on Sanguine, especially if you're playing with something like with an Assassination Rogue or a Frost Mage that are just like keeping the mobs perma-slowed, is pretty rough if you don't have a knockback. But I think that would be the only thing I would actually even touch on it, if anything.
it's a very low priority fix, though. Yeah, like Sanguine, I think, like if we're gonna leave some affixes unchanged, Sanguine can be one of them. That's fine by me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's give these the thumbs up or the thumbs down real quick. Bolstering, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Raging, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Thumbs down, but like I don't really care that much about raging. Like it's not hugely impacting my life, but I think it's one of the ones that they should definitely that is more clear that they should change.
Okay, so I think we're all unanimous on Sanguine thumbs up.
yeah.
Too.
Yeah, Sanguine thumbs up for sure. Teaming, huge double thumbs down. I'm gonna use both my thumbs on this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Two thumbs down.
Yeah, two thumbs down for teaming. Heck that Affix. Heck the RNG of teaming. Okay, like a Taldazar just randomly like, okay, good luck. See which these teaming enemies is spawned for you. That's cool. And then just like randomly these dungeons are there's just absurd teaming pulls in them. 5 dervish, and then there's just these extra patrols that just get added in a bunch of dungeons. Double commander and siege, for instance. Like, why, man?
Yeah.
So yeah, teaming sucks. Delete it.
That one needs to get changed. That one needs to get changed back to Legion teaming.
That's probably our
where
number
it's
one.
insignificant.
Replace teaming with reaping. Bring back reaping is so fun, and the problem people had with it was that it was the same every week. So if it's just an affix that's not active every week, that problem's entirely gone. So yeah, bursting. This one's tough. I like.
Okay, so
Yeah.
beginning of expansion, I was really thumbs down on after they changed it and made it just impossibly hard to heal. But as healer HPS has increased as the expansion has gone on, I've been more okay with bursting.
Yeah,
So right now, thumbs up.
Yeah, me too.
Like beginning of season 2 and late season 1, I was hard thumbs down though.
I still I think that this one, like, it still kind of favors the healer specs that are already favored by Mythic Plus. Like Disc Priest in particular has a really hard time with bursting, and that's not a spec that needs more hate across the affixes. So that's like a problem I have with it. I also have a problem with it in lower keys. I think bursting is one of these affixes that like it scales inversely with key level, and that's weird. So making it do damage that change it, like make it scale with key level a little bit instead. Like it could do the same or like a little bit more damage in high keys and make it do less damage in lower keys, I think would be good.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a dot either. I don't, or a bleed or whatever it is. I think it should be just like instant damage. I feel like that would be a little bit better for design. Instant damage, but like less per mob that dies.
Maybe you could give it like the void treatment where it's instant damage and it applies a couple seconds of like a vulnerability to it.
I hate that. No.
Well, because otherwise you don't have this thing about like rolling stacks and like not killing things. Like if it was just instant damage that didn't scale at all, you could just kill it all at once and it would be fine as long as you had the health for it.
10% per mob, like instant.
I personally would rather have it now than making it like the ticks and under, which is how I could see that idea.
Yeah,
because you can. Well, I mean, you can spread out killing the ticks as well. That's what I'm thinking of. But with bursting, you can, in higher keys, you can actually just let dots tick and it won't finish off the other mobs because their health is higher. And you have a chance to actually just walk away and then come back. Or, the more I think about it, I kind of like the ticks idea. I'm just going to go back to Trell's idea.
Yeah, I don't mind the dot. I think the dot's kind of cool way to do it. And I think it gives a bursting like an identity, and it makes that like not extending thing an important thing to do. And I actually think that not extending is a fun thing to try and do in keys.
Right.
So I think making that.
So thumbs up or thumbs down? I'm still thumbs up.
I'm thumbs up for bursting. Thumbs up. That's fine.
Okay.
Necrotic. Wow, interesting that this is mythicpl.us, by the way. Interesting that Necrotic of all affixes is one that they haven't read. This really goes to like. It's supposed to be colored based on difficulty, and like everything else has been green or yellow, and Necrotic is the one that they've singled out as red. So maybe this is really the experience that people are having in lower keys. But for me, Necrotic has not been the worst of these affixes. Like it's harsh on some keys in particular, but a good tank can make Necrotic into a pretty small deal.
Fuck, man, my perspective of this is so skewed because I don't play with bad tanks. Like, and the more that so you have to think about this in like mass populist perspective of tank that's going to run in, going to face tank the mobs for the full duration of how long they are alive, and they're either going to perish or they're going to complete and kill the pack.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to kite, then I could see Necrotic being the worst of these by far.
I think it's infinitely the worst for tanks that are just getting into the content or are just trying to figure out how to do these keys for the first time. That's like super hard for them. For me, I know the challenge, and I would agree that it's one of the harder affixes on that tier, but I know how to deal with it, and so I'd say on average it's probably about the same as dealing with explosive or quaking.
Maybe the solution is that Necrotic goes on this like level 15 tier. Like if we delete Tyrannical and Fortified and we just add a tier that starts at level 15 where there's like actually like expert affixes. Like I think Necrotic is a pretty good expert affix for experienced high key gamers and not something that you need to deal with in pugs, because it does sound like this is a barrier to people tanking these weeks, and it's it's rough for some tank specs in particular. Thinking about like Necrotic bosses, example, if you're not a brewmaster, like that's just a hard challenge. Like, what are you supposed to do on some of those? You need a plan.
Well, you also have Necrotic and Bursting. Like that is a legitimate week that you have to play on live.
That affix combo is just cruel. I don't know how they like they're curating the affixes or whatever, and they looked and they were like, okay, Necrotic Bursting, that's a good combo. Like, that's not fair, man. That sucks. You're just gonna die. There's no counterplay sometimes.
So I guess we're all thumbs down, but like, do we really know how to fix that?
Like, the problem is I'm thumbs up for Necrotic in high keys. Like I like the way Necrotic works in high keys. I think it's cool.
I don't fucking care either. I have trees, man. Like,
I think Necrotic could be nerfed by 1 or 2 seconds on the duration, so you could give most tanks a slightly better chance to drop it in some situations. Because I don't think they're ever going to remove that the lieutenant mobs can't be slowed. Some of them can't even be Ring of Peace or Typhoon or knocked at all. And so you have to have a way to just get out of the pole extremely fast and then hopefully stay out of range of these mobs for 5 or 6 seconds. I think it's 8 seconds on Necrotic right now. So I think if it was 6, it'd be a lot easier for tanks.
Okay, maybe that's the most reasonable thing.
Hear me out. I've had an idea. Do you know these buffs and stuff that people have that refresh stacks but not duration? What if Necrotic was like that? Necrotic is just like a 15-second debuff or a 20-second debuff, and when you get hit, it adds a stack, but it doesn't increase the duration. So like you guarantee that you're going to drop Necrotic when the debuff falls off at the end
Every
of that.
stack is unique. Okay,
Yeah, so
interesting.
it's like you know, the Demon Hunter has an ability like has a Azurite trait like that or whatever, where it refreshes in stacks but not duration, or like how Mongoose Bite used to work in Legion, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
I think it'd probably make it a little too easy in some situations, but it would definitely be more sensical and tanks would know how to deal with it a lot easier off the bat, at least.
yeah, and you'd kind of have this ebb and flow of how tanking a pack would work, where it's like, okay, getting close to unhealable, I'm unhealable. All right, spam heals into me. Okay, I'm unhealable. You know, or now it's ramping up. Now I'm unhealable.
It'll follow more of like a curve as opposed to like either I'm 100% healable or I'm 0% unhealable, where it feels like it currently stands right now.
Yeah.
But my only real problem with Necrotic is that they introduced so many anti-kite mechanics into BFA, but they still require tanks to kite in situations like Necrotic.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point too.
So, like, let's say all the Atal'Dazar pulls where there are mobs with 2 legs that have arms, they usually hit your party members if you're out of range as the tank. They have Shield Bash or Venom Fang Strike. I can't remember what it's called.
Yes,
anything with 2 legs in Atal'Dazar.
Shield Bash, the Venom Strike, Fervent Strike, and also Rending Maul.
Yeah, Rending Maul.
Yeah.
So anytime the tank's out of range, they'll target the nearest player instead, and probably one-shot them in higher keys unless they're ready for it and someone warns them about it. Like pop parry now, I'm kiting, I'm getting out. Everyone watch out. That kind of thing is very distasteful to me. I don't think they should require kiting and then also put in a mechanic that kills your friends if you kite.
Okay, so where do you guys land on Necrotic? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up for me, thumbs down for Pugs.
Yeah, I'm
gonna go thumbs down.
Like it's thumbs up for me, and definitely like if I was a game designer, this would actually be a pretty high priority affix to fix. So yeah, I'm thumbs down.
Yeah.
But again, like I'm happy. This is a case where I'm happy with my experience. I know other people's is bad.
Again, yeah, like I don't care. I run with myself all the time, so I have trees. So my tank is never in danger of dying on Necrotic. I'll just reset him whenever I feel like it.
I'm telling you that the just make it so that it doesn't refresh duration when you get new stacks, and that's I think that solves Affix. So you know, Blizzard, nice. If you're listening, which I believe you are, you know that's the fix for this one. You're welcome.
It's pretty decent. Actually.
That one's on me. That one's free. Skittish, next affix, another affix that's free for us in high keys. This one I think is the easiest affix on the calendar. I don't know if that's fair.
I'm down on this though.
Yeah, I mean it's stupid because like it just kind of requires you to have rogues in your group as well. Like rogues make this affix super free, and without rogues you actually do notice it quite a lot. But it's another affix that's like, hey, you need a good tank who's geared and like you know, generating a lot of threat, and there are a lot of tanks that are going to have more trouble with that. But again, in high keys, this one is pretty much an empty row on the affix list.
I don't think this one should be an affix. Is why I'm thumbs down on it in general. I just do not think that it should be in the game.
Yeah, this one is too easy for us in high keys, so it's not an interesting affix, and I don't. Like, I think that anytime Skittish is actually working, there's a small band where Skittish is interesting and like you need to play a little differently. But if you miss that band and you're on one side of that band, it's just a free affix. And if you're on the other side of that band, you just can't do keys because your tank can't hold threat. And I think it's pretty bad. Yeah. So I'm off it. I think Skittish should be removed.
I just don't think that if you're a tank doing your optimal damage rotation, you should ever lose threat. And skittish being a thing that makes that happen, and even non-skittish that can happen on certain polls or a certain comp in your group, I just don't think that should ever be possible, and it promotes bad gameplay and it makes things harder than they need to be.
Yeah.
Volcanic, another affix that is quite easy. There are a couple of specific boss fights where you will notice Volcanic. Last boss of Underrot, for instance, when all those spores are active, you start spawning them. Last boss of Toldagor, you start getting Volcanic under you and you have to move a little bit, and that can be rough. Outside of that, though, Volcanic pretty not affix, pretty non-affix. I think this one's even true among the lower key community. Like, everybody likes Volcanic Week because it's so easy.
I think a thumbs up on Volcanic, but I think they should probably make it spawn in melee a little bit more frequently.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. I think that I think I can agree with that. Yeah, make it so it actually matters in melee. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool affix. This one is easy again, so like finding ways to make this a little harder is reasonable too. But much like I don't care too much about them nerfing Sanguine a little bit. I don't care about buffing Volcanic a little bit either. I think that this is just it's in the range where it's good affix. Thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I'm in an okay save with that one too. Yeah, I think we're good.
Explosive, I have more problems with than Volcanic. With Volcanic, it's okay when there's 50 mobs that you're getting a lot more volcanoes. It's not true with Explosive. With Explosive, when you're fighting just a bunch of enemies at once, not only are you dealing with more stuff from the pack, you're also dealing with more Explosive at the same time as well. So you just kind of get this huge effect where you can't pull big anymore. And I think pulling big is an important part of keys. Also, just like randomly, explosives take AoE damage from a few specific abilities, and they have to fix those.
Aquapotent
Nautilus, yeah, it does damage to these. So
bro, what?
You could just randomly AoE these. Sometimes Survival Hunters were able to do it in Season 1 as well. I remember I had a one-trick Survival Hunter guildie in Uldir, and just that week he was just playing with like all the big keyers because Survival was so good on Explosive that week. Which is really awesome.
Okay, so for me, I would change Explosive to be like 2 hits from any damage source where pretty much any class could be able to deal with it, whether or not it's healer, tank, outlaw, rogue, any class could be able to deal with it. Like you could spam 2 instant cast dots on it. The issue right now is that as it currently stands is that you need 2 medium damage abilities.
Yeah.
But
So I think there's 2 problems with Explosive, right? The amount that it spawns going out of control as you pull a bunch of stuff, and also on the flip side of that, not being all that interesting on single target, because there's just one random explosive every 30 seconds. So that's one problem with Explosive, and then you've highlighted the other problem, which is that some classes can kill explosives and some classes can't. I think that is in fact a bigger problem. Yeah, I think if every class could kill explosives and you gave them that kind of totem treatment where they just took 2 hits and died of any hit, that would be good.
That for sure needs to make it in. And I think there should be a cap on how many orbs can spawn at a time. The RNG of it is insane. When you're trying to do a pull of like 10 mobs, for example, and sometimes you get 10 orbs on pull and sometimes you get 0, that is just really frustrating and gives you some false hope for the next time you do it.
They've moved a little bit in this direction. Like they have reduced the amount that spawn in big pulls, but they need to go further. And I think that they can increase the amount that spawn on single target. Like I think that when you're fighting a boss, you could kill more explosives and make the affix actually feel like it's relevant.
Okay, so what you guys are posing is that there's some diminishing returns per mob that you end up pulling.
There already is.
How many
just give it more than there currently is. Yeah.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that it's kind of fine as long as every class is able to actually hit the explosive. I think we're just sitting in a current state where 3 members of your party are actually able to DPS explosives at all right now. So I think that feels really rough.
I think that's true. I think if everybody could do it, it would be. I think that's the bigger issue with Explosive. But right now, as it stands, I'm a thumbs down on Explosive because I think both of those issues combined make it a pretty polarizing week where you have to have a specific comp and specific routes to do Explosive. And I think some affixes like increase the amount of options and thinking you have to do in dungeons, and Explosive kind of reduces that decision tree down. And it's just like, okay, we're pulling 1 pack at a time because it's Explosive week, and we're bringing Outlaw Rogues because it's Explosive week. So yeah. Down for me on explosives.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that.
Quaking is in green. Down. Quaking is in green.
All right. Well,
what?
Mythic PL.us
unavoidable damage down.
This is the hardest affix on here. Okay, maybe it's not the hardest, but this is one of the hardest affixes on here.
Yeah. So, man, okay, so Quaking's got a lot of issues. One, it's unavoidable damage, and 2, it's like the top damage source that you're going to take over the whole entire key, and it's unavoidable. Like, those 2 issues are by far the biggest issues, and I think we've talked about it before, so we can be kind of brief on this, but they should make it to where, like, if you're not stacked on top of somebody else, you shouldn't take damage from it.
Yeah. My idea was just
and it happens on combat shit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Huge thumbs down. Lots of things to change about this, but yeah.
Everyone likes Volcanic because if you play well, you don't take the damage, and if you play bad, you get punished. But Quaking should be the same way.
Yeah, just make it so that it does very small damage if you're the only person in your circle, and then it scales back up pretty quick if you cleave people.
Wait, fuck, man. Think about the dichotomy between Volcanic and Quaking. Quaking, non-dodgeable, always going to hit you. Hits you out of combat. Volcanic, only in combat. Dodgeable.
Doesn't even happen in melee. Right?
Doesn't hit melee, yeah. Doesn't interrupt your casts. Like
it's like
fuck. Wait, it doesn't interrupt your cast. Hold on.
Well, it can, but like you can take the damage. Yeah. Well, that's true. Healers do have to move for Volcanic, and they have to stop casting for Waking. So it's kind of similar for healers actually.
Shit.
In terms of what they have to do, but like for DPS, it just doesn't impact you. Volcanic doesn't, whereas Quaking can if you're a caster.
Yeah, so Quaking's to get the volcanic treatment and basically just not do damage if you're not stacked on top of one another. I'm actually okay with it being a thing whenever you're out of combat. Like,
Yeah,
shit, but
I kind of don't mind it too much. Like,
it's not A tier priority for me to get changed.
Yeah. I do think it's kind of silly that it's like it's RNG as well. Like Quaking is just on this 20. For people who don't know, Quaking is on this RNG timer where just every 20 seconds the game flips a coin or whatever and decides whether or not there's going to be a quake. And if there is, you know, it can be just hugely different. So like randomly your shroud can get owned if you're playing with a brewmaster or whatever, and the quake comes. So you just have to wait for that. Also, I think I want to share with everybody the Quaking weak aura as well. Hang on, Quaking timer.
Yeah, there's actually some good knowledge.
Weak
It
aura.
happens consistently, and you can see when it's about to happen on a weak aura, and you can kind of plan for it at least to play around it. But sometimes you can skip so many in a row that your weak aura disappears. Like if you haven't gotten a whole quake for a minute, my weak aura just falls off the screen because it doesn't know when it's going to happen next.
This is one. There's a couple different ones. I'm putting some in chat. I'll put one in the show notes as well. The description of this.
Throwing in the show notes,
Which we post on our Discord.
Yeah, we do indeed do that. So basically, you can get an affix that tracks this 20-second thing, and that's a huge thing you should be doing on Quaking Week. It makes it a lot more manageable. So if you're somebody who plays without that right now, get that weak aura for the next Quaking Week.
Okay, so Quaking, I think we're all thumbs down on.
Yeah,
thumbs down,
biggest
for
thumbs
sure.
down, I think. Well, maybe not biggest, but it's close. It's one of the big ones to change.
Yeah. So then we got Grievous.
Grievous.
Right?
While below 90% health, players are affected by a grievous wound. I think I'm
That one's hard
okay
to
with
say.
Grievous.
Hold on. I'm thumbs up if I'm playing with the Resto Druid. I'm thumbs down with literally every other healer.
Yeah.
I'm thumbs down when I'm playing Prot Warrior, and I'm thumbs up when I'm playing Brewmaster because I have so many ways to get myself out.
That's true. Yeah,
But-
Grievous is pretty rough on particular. I mean, I feel like that's just your skill level with Brewmaster. Like Brewmaster used to be really rough on Grievous. I think like you had to play like Healing Elixir to be.
I don't think
able
so.
to
Season
break
one,
yourself?
it was still one of the best tanks. Healing Elixir would get you out. Expel Harm would get you out. You had lots of healing things to help you
Okay, yeah.
get yourself out with your healer.
Now that I think about it, I was not playing with the Resto Druid that season, so I that may have been the problem actually with the Affix, might not have been the Brewmaster thing. Yeah, Grievous definitely tells you're right. This is another one that just kind of punches the healer specs that are already hurting and is really good for Resto Druid, which you know everything is.
Yeah, basically, if I'm playing with the Resto Druid, it feels fine. If I'm not playing with the Resto Druid, I think I would want to delete my character.
Yeah.
I just don't like how it interacts with some bosses. Like some bosses, it just makes infinitely more difficult. Such
Sand
as Void.
Queen.
Sand Queen is pretty rough. Galv's Temple is pretty rough. Is there another one I'm missing? I guess every King's Rest boss.
Heartsbane Triad.
Gorgeous.
Heartsbane Triad, Grievous.
Heartsman Triad, very hard.
Volcall Grievous. That one's a real thing now these days. Volcall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Avatar Seth Rallis and Temple with the Pulse is also fucking terrible.
True. Yeah.
Anyways. So,
Actually,
yeah.
all the temple bosses are kind of hard on Grievous. Now that I think about it, like first and second too. Okay.
All right, so I think we're all thumbs down.
Yeah, I think we're thumbs down on Grievous. I think that there's something there that is interesting. I
don't know. I feel like I'm in the similar category with Skittish where I'm gonna delete this category.
Okay, yeah, I would be fine with deleting this and replacing it with something better. I think that, you know, of the affixes, this is a pretty high priority one to delete. Yeah, I think deleting Skittish would be better. Like if you could only delete one, I would delete Skittish. I think.
I think I
or
would agree with that.
teaming and turn it into reaping.
Teaming is a liable for a big change too. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's good to know, like when we talk about each individual affix, we're talking about removing one set aside from the others with our thumbs down or thumbs up. But I think like if they were to delete Tyrannical, I don't think Grievous would really be that bad for these bosses we're thinking of.
Okay, so thumbs down doesn't mean delete. Thumbs down means I'm not okay with it in its current state. It needs to be
Sure, it
changed.
just needs to be changed. Like independent of other affixes, I mean.
Yeah,
exactly.
but you're right. There are some affixes that wombo combo, right? Like
Yeah.
and often it is with Tyrannical or Fortified that things are these particularly rough combos, right? Like teaming Fortified, for instance, versus teaming Tyrannical is a big difference too.
Quaking Tyrannical. Hell yeah, bro.
All right, and then
Yeah,
final. Okay, good.
We all agree that we could use some tuning on each affix that we're talking about. I think a big solution of this to just be less affixes interacting with each other, because the combo of what we were saying, like Fortified plus Grievous, is what makes it hard. So if you tune one of them or remove one, I think it'd be a lot better. Go on, Dretnus.
Yeah, so you're right that like there, fixing half of this would fix more than half of the problems, because a lot of the problems is the interaction, and like if there's 2 hard affixes, it's a lot worse than 1 hard affix. And
Right.
1 hard affix you can play around, but multiple hard affixes in the same week, like this week, and you start really having a rough time. Okay, do we want to talk a little bit about seasonal affixes and what we thought about them so far, or do we want to leave that for future times?
I mean, I've actually come around. I think we can be brief on it. So I've actually kind of come around to the seasonal affixes. I'm actually pretty happy with how Tides weeks and Enchanted weeks have come full circle. Tides, it feels like it's pretty easy to get count in a lot of dungeons. It feels kind of okay to play. Enchanted, obviously the easiest for coordinated groups. You just continuously knock out the Enchanted Emissary. Void's weeks feel impossible. I think that's the short of the beguiling situation right now.
Infested was kind of like this too, right? Where there were some infested patterns that were really rough on some dungeons, but at least it was like not the same week for all the dungeons. Like Void Week is rough everywhere, but it used to be that just there were like 1 week, King's Rest was closed or whatever on Infested because the like Infesteds were in the Gauntlet, and that was really rough. And then other week, that other weeks it would be Motherlode being closed because of what was infested in there. So I think that I think the Void Week is a big problem, and it is the biggest problem with beguiling. And if you fix voids, I think you're in good shape. Something is like just nerf void health a little bit. Nerf the rate that it scales into higher keys, the health on voids. Nerf or buff the amount of count they give a little bit. I think any combination of those changes would go a long way towards fixing voids and making it a little bit more of a balanced affix.
I think we're all fans of seasonal affixes, though. Overall, I think we like the change from season to season, so we can keep finding interesting gameplay.
Keeps kind of fresh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, I guess that'll about do it here for our main topic. This was a fun one though. I like talking about affixes. Let's move on to our questions and answers. So our first one comes from at WowZack on Twitter. Says voids destroy dungeons and make streamlining them almost impossible if you aren't a night elf. This is true. Yeah, that's pretty correct. Pretty correct on Void Week. Yeah, that's not a question. That's true. I agree though.
Yeah, I mean it's really rough, especially once you get into these positions where they're just with packs that are not playable too, like the Volcall Trash pack or the Tettles and JB died to the Archer Krolisk Pup pack too.
Yeah. The Druid Graveyard pack.
Yes.
Okay. Next question. This one may actually, in fact, be a question. Comes from @SameTweet, who I think we've had featured multiple times actually for asking good questions here. Would you say that certain affixes, for example, bolstering, become a lot harder in lower keys due to power increase? Like RND, I think that means RNG. RNG procs might kill mobs unintentionally. If so, aren't these affixes poorly designed for average players? Yeah, I think actually we talked about this. I think seeing this question, I think we ended up talking about this during our main show.
Caused us to talk about it, yeah.
But yeah, that's true. I think that having some affixes that are designed to, like things like bolstering and bursting and whatever that scale based on percent instead of like if bolstering increased by an amount that scaled on key level instead of based on percent or something. I don't know. I guess it's kind of hard to make bolstering fairer in lower keys and harder in higher keys or anything.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, in Legion, bolstering felt literally impossible, but then that was because you had some dungeons like I have a Sharo where you want to pull every crap pack in the history of existence into Serpent Tricks, but it was no longer possible.
All right, next question comes from Alva on Discord. During bolstering weeks, what are appropriately sized pulls? What add-ons, weak auras, and class abilities exist that can assist with bolstering weeks? This is a great question. Let's start off by talking about the weak aura assistance that is available. This is my favorite weak aura for this. It's called Yan's Bolstering and Sanguine Helper. I'll put it in the chat here in Twitch chat, but it's also, this one will be below in the YouTube or whatever description too. this basically will put a marker on the enemy with the highest health, not percent health, but the highest like number of health, and that marker will keep changing as you keep fighting the pack. So if you just are always dealing your damage to the highest health target, this makes bolstering a lot easier. You still have to be careful with your amount that you're cleaving, right? Like if there's a mob that has 3 times as much health as all the others and you're still cleaving, and even if you're priority targeting that one, if your priority damage is less than 3 times as much as your AoE or whatever, then you're still going to bolster that thing. But it's really useful. So this add-on, or this week, I think is a huge tool for bolstering weeks, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of do these pulls and just be like, okay, we're pulling 16 oozes in King's Rest Machimba's room or whatever. Just always be hitting X and we're going to be fine. That pretty much works in here. Yeah. I guess it's Moon. You can change it in the Affix. So the one that's been shared around among all my friends is X.
X for me. I don't actually want to warn people when you use this weak core, you got to be careful what other weak core are auto marking things. Like a lot of people use a dungeon auto marker to select certain casters so that they're automatically marked with like the first 3, I think, skull, star, or triangle on your bar. And then people can easily just say, I'll get skull since they're auto marked. But you got to be careful not to overwrite other weak auras. Like X would take off an X that was done previously by that weak aura and assign it to the highest health mob. Or it would take an X off, let's say, the tank that they put on themselves so everyone can see them. So I play with X on myself all the time in certain groups, and then circle in other groups because of weak auras they use, just because I'm aware of like what weak auras they're using to mark certain mobs. Just something to think about for that.
Trell, how about the other part of this question about the pull sizing on bolstering? What do you think about that?
I personally think that you shouldn't pull more than 8 equal health mobs and a high key on bolstering. I think it's a time loss after that. So like freehold, it's actually kind of sketchy to pull 2 packs on bolstering. It might even be faster just to do 1 pack at a time, as boring as it is. But it's like really close to that threshold around that mark.
Particularly like if there's a priority target or whatever. Like if you kill something and the rest of the pack's at 20% health or whatever, you're just adding so much health to that pack if you're fighting 10 enemies. So yeah, I think you're right. I think like even though it doesn't feel that way, it's actually going to be faster to pull things smaller. And yeah, I think 8 is a good number. That sounds about right.
It's always hard to quantify because a lot of mobs have slightly different health, or will do mechanics to put them out of the group for a second and then come back in, like the Juggernauts and Balthazar. Mm-hmm. Both have more health and they charge a player at range, so they get out of the main AoE and then come back. So it's hard to like say, in a perfect world, you could probably do 15 mobs and bolster kill them perfectly and it'd be fine. But in reality, I think 8 is the magic number where it starts to become not worth it to pull more on bolstering in general.
All right, next question.
Hold on, do you guys want to talk about class abilities for that or not? Sap and Ring of Peace?
Sure, yeah, okay. Sap, Ring of Peace, and Prison are like A-tier abilities against bolstering, and everything else is like a lot worse. It's so weird that like, okay, Imprison gets mobs. When you put a mob in prison, they just don't remember and they're not in combat. And then when you like freezing trap something, it does and it is in combat. Or like you paralyze it, or you repentance it. Like I don't understand why there's a functional difference between Sap and Prison and the rest, but there should not be. Those should function the same way.
That's a topic we could do sometime. I think all CC should be equal in regards to how the mob works with like being completely out of combat or only in combat with one player when they walk by. But the class fantasy, what Dratnos is talking about is when they're paralyzed or they're trapped, they can still like see and think, and so they put a person in combat, whereas if they're sapped or imprisoned, they don't.
It's just awkward with how sap works because you have to be out of combat and you have to be in stealth, and the mob has to also be out of combat for you to be able to sap them. I think it's part of the issue with sap. But
sap, I'm kind of fine with. I'm fine with some of the CC being special and working in a different way. I just wish it made sense and felt more consistent and like didn't change from patch to patch. Like, do you guys remember when Repentance used to be out of combat and now it just randomly is in combat?
Legion, and then randomly it got changed coming into this expansion. That was weird.
Yeah. So that I think needs some. I think that making it so that like mobs didn't get bolstered if they were hard CC'd before the pull started would go a long way towards fixing this. Like whatever the hard CC is, as long as they were hard CC'd before they got in combat, they don't get bolstered. I think we're in good shape with just that change.
That makes sense to me too.
Lovelace asks, have you addressed Trell switching to Mistweaver? We have not. Trell, what's happening? What's happening with this?
Have you addressed Trell switching to Moonkin either?
Yeah, Trell switching to Moonkin, to Mistweaver. What's going on?
Trell is very bored this week. Trell does not want to push high keys on Void Week too much. We're probably gonna do something tonight, but just one day to keep ourselves fresh. But it's a good all week, so I've just been playing my Mistweaver and helping my friend Dad gear his DH, and I was playing Boomkin yesterday for the same thing, just having some fun doing slightly lower keys and kind of reprogressing as a alt group on 18s is somewhat fun even on Void Week.
Okay, I suppose that's a reasonable response to that. All right, Cry asks, how would you feel if they changed keys so affixes weren't fixed on a given week? Like each key you get has different affixes, so there's not a dead week, but you still have dead keys, obviously. People ask this one all the time to me. I hate this idea so much.
I actually hate this idea too.
It sounds good, but if you've ever like gone to Tournament Realm and just had to play like different affix keys in the same day, which you know all of us I'm sure have done, it's really jarring. Like it's really hard to play different affixes in the same day. Do you guys know how at the start of each week you kind of have to like relearn the affixes of the key? And like the first time you do a bolstering key each week, you're gonna have oopsies. You're gonna have bolstering oopsies.
Or your tank is kind of like it's necrotic, even though it's no longer necrotic.
Yeah, or like
the muscle memory
like
just kicks in from last week.
And it's like at the start of this week, I would cue my mic and I would just say like, you know, stop for bursting, and people would stop damage. And you know that is just like you're still kind of keyed in to how to deal with each of these affixes, and they require so much change in your play that if you made it so that you had to redo these affixes, like randomly have different affixes on each of these keys, it's really hard. Like I don't think it's a hard thing for people to do in the MDI, like day of, during the MDI, playing these different maps with these different affixes. That's hard work for like that requires a lot of these brain power from the game's best players. I don't think that everybody would. I don't think anybody would like this. I think it would be really unpleasant.
Yeah, I think that would. Jason was talking about in chat. It's already hard enough to get the best high keys, just because there's 1 in 10 chance of getting the key you want. Imagine multiplying that with affixes on those keys as well.
Oh yeah,
that would just be a nightmare.
Yeah, true. You're just like rolling a Toldagor, and you're like, okay, you know, it's volcanic skittish or whatever, or you know, whatever the best possible combination of affixes. You're just trying to Titanforge your keystone at the end of each dungeon, also.
Then you get you're like finally get Toldagor, but it's tyrannical, grievous, quaking, something like that. What's the worst possible Toldagor?
That sounds like the worst possible Toldagor to me. Yeah. So I think that this is one of those ideas that sounds good. It sounds like a good solution to it, and I think it's a good thought. But I think it would be pretty bad in practice, actually. Like really really bad. Like I think this is like killing Mythic Plus level of bad, which Blizzard has tried and failed to do multiple times this expansion already. Okay. Any other good questions you guys have found? Or we
what about keys not having a dungeon assigned to them, and then Blizzard could see the dungeons that need to work from Sacred Night 19?
Okay, yeah, this is a kind of a cool idea where you just you get like a level 19 key or whatever, and you can just put it into any dungeon you want and run that. I think that this is like a little bit too much. You would just always do a couple specific dungeons, and you like. I think that it's good right now that you're kind of forced to go between dungeons, and you can't just spend a whole day in the Underrot. That's another thing that people who haven't played on Tournament Realm won't really know about. But like, no matter how good Freehold is, just optimizing your Freehold route and only playing Freehold for 6 hours is not as fun as going between different dungeons and doing different ones.
Do you feel like it would actually be like that? I feel like you would get some variety overall.
You'd maybe get some, but I think that people would mostly like you know how if we have multiple temple keys or whatever, we'll do one and then we'll do the other because we're warmed up on temple, and we'll keep doing all of our keys of the of that dungeon until we got it right or whatever, until we were happy with it, until we'd rolled them into different dungeons. So I think that would be bad. I do think that there is a little bit of an area for that'll fill the space that deleting keys used to fill, where you didn't have to do all the keys in your group, right? Like, you know how at the end of the week everybody's keys are always like, okay, we've got
King's Rest.
Yeah, King's Rest. We got 5 King's Rest in our group now. It's time to go to King's Rest and turn these into some other keys, you know, a couple levels lower or whatever. So I think that some kind of effect where a keystone had 2 dungeons on it, for instance, and you could go to either of those 2, I think that would go a long way towards being a middle ground between being able to do anything and being hard locked to these rough dungeons and having your keys get worse over the week. So I think that that's what I would do with the system. Is I would just say dungeons have 2 keystones on them, and you could do either of those.
I have a slightly varied idea, and I've thought about it a lot because I really miss deleting keystones from season 1. And every time I hear about this, I think about this idea, and that is you get a certain key out of your box each week, and that doesn't affect the general public because then they have their assigned key that they could do or find a friend's key to do instead. But then when you run that key, at the end, you get a choice between 3 random dungeons on your next key. And you just select which one you want. It doesn't have to be all 10. You can just select one of 3 that they RNG give you, and that would still have their RNG element that they love to put in the game, as well as not having the deleting key system so that people only do freehold each week, for example.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty similar thing to just having a dungeon having 2, or Keystone having 2 dungeons on it. I think you'd see a pretty similar effect.
Yeah, either one would be good, honestly.
To that. Okay, what would it take for Shadow Priest to be meta in M+? This is an interesting question. Yeah, it's good. It's good, especially like, you know, King's Honor friend. When we go Alliance and we need something to kill those minions Azul, Shadow Priest is going to be there for us.
Okay, so Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus is actually incredibly powerful right now. However, it similarly to Mage requires your tank to play heavily towards the Shadow Priest player. You have to be like pretty much constantly chain pulling to be able to feed the insanity to the Shadow Priest, because if they drop combat, then they're losing potential damage that they would otherwise be gaining. They basically always need to be in combat with at least one mob.
Shadow Priest is also pretty high skill cap spec in Mythic Plus, I'd say. I think there's a lot going on there for that spec. I'm not sure how true that is. I haven't played one myself, but from what I've seen, it looks like there's a pretty big variance between the best Shadow Priests and the next best.
I don't know if it's so. I got this question on my stream because I get asked about other ranged DPS a fair amount, and I don't feel like Shadow Priest is necessarily on the player itself. It feels like it's more on the tank and how the tank is actually playing around.
That probably is it. Yeah. Whenever I've seen low damage Shadow Priest, it was probably just the tank was making them drop Void Form every pull.
Okay, not exactly what I was saying.
No. I'm not actually. I think that you're probably right. Like that's probably a large part of it. Is like the difference in damage I've seen between Shadow Priest is largely from the tank and how the dungeon's being pulled. I think that's true.
Like Ardent Censor, that guy does a freakish amount of damage. I saw him do like 75k in a freehold. There's obviously that Alliance Shadow Priest at Natalea who also does just that guy does like 80k DPS in some dungeons, and I just like look at that and I'm just like, holy shit.
Well, the question is what needs to change for them to be meta, right? I think it's honestly that the range spot is limited to 1 range per dungeon.
Yeah, and that silence is such a bad kick too, right? Like at least Fire Mage has a 24-second kick, which is reasonably enough on some pulls to like you can be assigned to many of the important kicks, if not all of them. But Shadow Priest can't get any important kicks.
Silence is 30 seconds, isn't it?
They can talent it down to 30, yeah, but that's still longer than the 25 cooldown.
They talent it down to 30 because the only other stuff on that row is Mind Bomb and Psychic Horror, I think.
Right.
You don't single target stun.
It's true, but still 30 is a lot longer than 24 when a lot of casts are on a 25-second cooldown, right? A lot of the important casts, like Mending Rapids, are on a 25-second cooldown.
I mean, yeah, well, if you're assigning a ranged DPS to a kick, you're trolling anyways, right?
That's true, yeah. But silence being a longer kick than the others is not helping. It doesn't help for some of the bosses as well.
You can play around it. You could have someone stun the mob to delay it for your kick to be up, or disorient it, or do something. There's always a way to play around that kind of thing if it's slightly longer than the actual cooldown of the ability you're trying to get. But honestly, I really think that since there's only 1 range spot and that mages and boomkins have been a little more popular, it's just that much harder for Shadow Priest to get into keys.
Yeah, I think it's more just that you can't play more than 1 range in a key, right? Like if you could do that, I think you'd see more Shadow Priests.
I think it's that Moonkin and Mage are popular and have been popular for so long, and Shadow Priest actually still has a stigma of it being bad that has carried over from Legion whenever they were legitimately like
that is true. That's always a problem with like any good spec, but is not like heavily played at the current moment. Like even in season 1 of this expansion, Brewmaster was pretty good, but nobody played it because they were also playing Blood DK from Legion, which was still strong as well. So there's no point in like trying to learn a new meta tank. And it had to be done in season 2, where both Brewmaster and DK became much worse, and Prot Warrior became a lot better for everyone to switch to Prot Warrior finally from Blood DK.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's how it always goes.
Okay, got a question here from Johnny One Lung. What are your thoughts on affixes that give a boon? On either the weekly or the seasonal slot, something that gives you a power level boost instead of most affixes being negative. I think that it would be cool to have a positive affix row. I think that would be interesting. I think that also maybe a better way to do it would be to have affixes that have upside and downside. Kiss curse affixes, I think, are the term that people use to describe these. Something where you get a bonus if you do the mechanic right and a drawback if you don't, right? Like what was it? There was that dance in Mogushan Vaults, right, where if you stood in melee with these bosses, they would do this like blade combo, and you have to dodge it. And if you dodged it all, you got to like hit them for a really large amount of damage.
Jadefire Masters, you have to face the
Jadefire Masters facing the thing. Yeah, so those sorts of mechanics where it's like, okay, execute this correctly and you get a buff. Execute this poorly and you take damage. Execute this really poorly and you die. That sort of thing, I think would be pretty cool. Yeah.
If there was a Queen of Shara's Decree is like the seasonal fix, you do it correctly and you get a buff. You do it incorrectly, you get silenced.
Yeah.
And then you miss your kick, and then your group wipes, and then you're sad.
Yeah. You're talking about the repeat performance affix or whatever.
I was you up a repeat performance, but
yeah. All right, I think that about does it here for our question and answer segment. I think we've covered a lot of these here, although there are a bunch of good ones that we weren't able to get to. So thanks everybody for sending these ones in, and you can always talk to us in our Discord. We're pretty active there. So if we didn't answer your question on the air, join our Discord and talk to us there. We'd be happy to continue the conversation. But for now, that's going to do it for us. We'll be back next week for more Titanforge podcast. But bye, everybody.
Till next time.